Let's start with the news segment, and traditionally I will start this stream with a report from Russian media that is based on the latest update of Defense Ministry about work of Russian air defense systems on duty overnight. So reports are that during the past night, Russian air defense systems intercepted 74 drones that were launched by formally Kiev regime, in reality NATO, obviously, to strike deep into Russian territory. To be more precise, 43 drones were intercepted over the Bryansk region, 22 drones over the Rostov region, 6 drones over territory of Kaluga region, 2 over territory of Smolensk region, 1 drone over the Leningrad region. Unfortunately, as a result of these drone attacks on Russian Federation, some of the drones seems like managed to bypass air defense systems on duty. And this morning, number of sources reported that as a result of this Ukrainian NATO drone attack on Russian Federation, in Rostov region, a passenger train and the freight train was targeted, as a result of which windows were shattered in at least 2 carriages of passenger train number 59 that was moving from Novokuznetsk to Kislovodsk. Obviously, passengers were evacuated, and also in a station area, and this happened, by the way, in a Salsk station, fire erupted as a result of this attack. I can show you some videos of aftermath of this terrorist attack of Kiev regime and NATO. So, as you can see, friends, videos are there. So, obviously, it is difficult to say currently level of damage, but allegedly, there was no, due to luck or miracle, there was no death among civilians in that passenger train. Of course, during the day, most likely Ministry of Transport of the Russian Federation, possibly Defense Ministry, will share additional information, and of course I will publish it on my Telegram and Twitter X page, maybe in next updates, or maybe even in second news update today that I might make for Patreon and Boosty. Let's see how they goes news-wise, obviously. So unfortunately, as I have said many times before, no air defense system in this world, even the best one, as it is in case of Russia, are capable of intercepting 100% aerial targets constantly, and time to time, some drones are managing to bypass air defense systems and causing damage and casualties among civilians. And when it comes to civilian casualties, dear friends, you're not going to hear this news, for example, in any of the Western so-called media outlets, in Western MSM, but Russian media, of course, reporting that, for example, as a result of Ukrainian, I will add NATO strikes, 24 civilians were killed, and over 130 civilians were injured past week. Just past week, by the way, as a result of these terrorist attacks that NATO and Kiev regime are conducting against Russia. I can give you some details from this report. So 24 civilians were killed in Ukrainian. Yet again, I will add NATO attacks on Russian regions in the past week, and over 130 people suffered injuries. Radion Miroshnik, the Russian Foreign Ministry's ambassador at large tasked with overseeing the Kiev regime's crimes, told the TASS news agency. The envoy pointed out their enemy had fired nearly 2,800 projectiles at the Russian territory in the past week, most of them made in a NATO countries. So no wonder I'm almost always, by the way, highlighting that this is not just Kiev regimes, this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky that is conducting these terrorist attacks, but it's NATO itself, right? Because after all, weapons are provided by NATO, and flight path and targeting data is also provided by NATO. So clearly this terrorist organization that NATO is maybe not openly, but definitely directly involved in this war against Russia. Obviously, everybody nowadays are talking about also new ultimatum, let's say, of Trump, of 10, 12 days. As you know, dear friends, like a week ago, Trump came up with an ultimatum against Russia and said that if in 15 days, or if during the next 50 days, Russia would not capitulate, that's basically what he was saying. If Russia would not agree on the Western demands, then, he threatened with sanctions, tariffs, and something else, right? And while being in Scotland, he once again spoke about this ultimatum, and he said that, 50-day ultimatum is no longer relevant. Now he has a new time frame. Let's listen to his statement in a short video and then continue.
Earlier, you said that you were going to change the deadline from 50 days. So what is your new deadline? What can we expect?
I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. There's no reason in waiting. It's 50 days. I want to be generous, but we just don't see any progress being made.
So 12 or 12 days, probably either today or tomorrow, Trump will make his position a little more clear. Probably he will post about it, something on his true social network. But in any case, Russia has rejected this ultimatum talk from Washington. And I can give you a reaction of Russian side on that in a minute's time. But first of all, let's talk about what might happen after this 10 or 12 days. Obviously, many experts or commentators in alternative media and also in Western MSM or Western or world media are talking about possible scenarios, what US might do. On surface, we can see threats to impose sanctions, additional sanctions on Russia, and also secondary sanctions on allies of Russia or trade partners of Russia that buy from Russian Federation oil, gas, or oil products, and so on. And I think, even though this threat is on the surface, I think this is most definitely kind of a bluff. I remind you, dear friends, that Trump already announced that if it comes to these sanctions and secondary tariffs or sanctions on Russian allies, he will impose 100% tariff on allies, right? On Russia's allies. This is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. One should keep in mind, by the way, that when it comes to Russian, let's say, energy exports, by the way, main partners with Russia in this regard are China and India, of course, also Brazil, by the way. This is BRICS member states, obviously. And I don't think US leadership will dare to sanction either of these countries with 100% tariffs. I really don't think so. After this 10, 12-day ultimatum, Trump might impose maybe some 10, possibly 20% tariffs, but not 100% tariffs, by the way, for sure. And therefore, I certainly don't believe that US will ever adopt a bill that was created in the US Senate by Senators Blumenthal and Lindsey Graham that indicates 500% tariffs on Russian trade partners. It's just not happening because it will devastate US economy, first of all, right? So it's a bluff. That's my take on the situation. And when it comes to sanctions on Russia itself, then in this regard, we just simply don't care. I mean, they can impose another 20,000 sanctions if they want, or we just don't care. Man, Russia did demonstrated already that country is very well capable of dealing with this Western pressure. I remind you that already collective West introduced some 30,000+ sanctions, by the way, and Russia is most sanctioned country ever in world's history, right? So that's the one thing. In my personal opinion, we should be focused more on is that, I think after this 10, 12-day ultimatum, US, UK, France, Germany, and their proxy terrorist regime in Kiev will launch a massive, or they will try to launch massive. How successful they would be, that's a different story, but they will try to launch massive sabotage activities inside the Russian Federation. They will use most of their assets that they have inside the Russia, and unfortunately, I'm afraid they do have some assets inside the Russia. And obviously, counter-terrorism and counter-intelligence institutions here in Russia are working actively to neutralize these assets. So first, most likely they will try to launch these massive sabotage operations all over the Russia to distract communications, literal communications, internet, phone, also transport communications, logistics, basically to distract logistics big time. Simultaneously, most likely these NATO countries and their proxy will launch large scale, maybe even unprecedented scale of long range strikes with drones and missiles deep into Russian territory. They will most likely target Moscow and St. Petersburg also. And I'm quite sure Russian militaries are preparing for such a development. Although one should keep in mind that I don't think US or UK or any of the other NATO member states will get engaged in this war against Russia openly. They will still maintain plausible deniability in their minds. At least they will use a Kiev regime, right? They will say whatever had happened, it's Kiev regime. It's not Washington or London or Paris or Berlin, right? But we all know who is behind these attacks, right? We know it now, and we will know it tomorrow. It's just too obvious. So that's what they think. By the way, they will try to launch large-scale sabotage operations inside the Russia, large-scale drone and missile strikes deep into Russian territory, possibly with not just 100, maybe even 1,000 of drones and missiles, right? Especially drones, by the way. They don't have thousands of missiles to launch, but they do have hundreds of them, right? And they are actively transferring these weapon systems into Kiev-controlled territory right now, these days. And one of the reasons, dear friends, why Trump dropped this 50-day ultimatum to 10, 12 days is that I think Russian military intelligence successfully located their warehouses where Kiev regime was storing, Kiev regime and its NATO allies were storing these long-range weapon systems. And the Russian military successfully targeted these areas, including in the Stara Konstantinov airfield, which was a main target of Russian long-range precise strikes day before yesterday, right? And maybe to minimize or shorten logistical time frame, Trump was recommended by his generals or maybe by Keir Starmer and British militaries to shorten this time frame up to 10, 12 days because they are sending these weapon systems. Russia is destroying these weapon systems, and 50 days after 50 days there might be no weapons left, these long-range weapon systems left in Kiev-controlled territory, or very few of overall volume that was allocated to be sent there, right? So maybe there is a connection there. I cannot know for sure, but maybe there is a connection in this regard. Also, dear friends, I think NATO has already prepared yet another suicidal offensive operation of the Kiev regime, probably incursion operation into Russian Federation, maybe in the Bryansk region, and possibly in Belgorod or Kursk direction. But I think most likely NATO has prepared their operation, yet another suicidal operation that Kiev regime will undertake in direction of Bryansk region, and we will find out soon if my reading of the big picture is correct. Hopefully, Russian militaries are locked and ready to take out enemy forces whenever they will try to attack Bryansk region or conduct incursion into Bryansk region. And obviously, question will rise: how will Moscow respond? What is going to be continuation of this escalation? And I think after this large scale, in my personal opinion, inevitable attempt of the West to conduct a massive destruction of life of the ordinary people here inside Russia, while sabotaging communication, sabotaging logistics, and so on. Also, do it through inevitable, in my opinion, large scale or unprecedented scale long range strikes on Russia that NATO will launch after this ultimatum, and also do it through potential attempt to invade Russian territory again. Moscow probably will have no option but to really retaliate this time, and not just against the Kiev regime, this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky, or their military and logistical assets. But I think there will be high probability at that point that Russia will retaliate on U.S., British, French, and German military assets. Where and when exactly is anybody's guess, but I think Moscow will not really have an option but to take such actions, such steps that will force globalists, that will force neocons in US and their puppets that are acting as presidents and prime ministers and so on in governments of collective West countries to basically come to their senses finally and face the reality that if they continue escalation with Russia, that will mean full-scale war. That will mean full-scale war between NATO and Russia. And then we will see what is going to happen. I think after that point, globalists will finally begin de-escalating, or Western ruling class will finally begin really de-escalating, because I don't think they are suicidal. That's how it is. But we are getting very close, in my personal opinion, to unprecedented scale of escalation between NATO and Russia, with the high risks, with increased risks of a full-scale war between NATO and Russia. I still don't believe that it comes to full-scale war and a full-scale nuclear exchange. I don't believe this will happen because, in my opinion, Western elites are not suicidal, not that dumb, right? And once Russia will take strong actions against their enemy forces, including US, France, UK, Germany, Poland, some others maybe, against their military assets, I think for a short time there might be the exchange of strikes, right, between NATO and Russia in a, let's say, limited scale. But eventually, Western ruling class will realize that they cannot continue, because that will mean a full-scale war with Russia. And they are not suicidal. They will begin de-escalating. They will back down because they have to. They lost this proxy war, by the way, right? Entire NATO is fighting against Russia. Entire collective West is fighting against Russia. They are financing this war. They are sending weapons with this war, and they are using best fighters they can use, which is our people, by the way, that were brainwashed in Kiev-controlled territory on this former Soviet Republic, Ukraine, right? I don't think the US or British or French armies could give us such a fight as our brainwashed cousins did in Ukraine, right? This is a NATO war against Russia. This is a collective West is conducting war against us, and I think time come to take the war on their territory. And this is going to happen, by the way, soon. Once after this ultimatum expires, NATO will go ahead with the next phase of escalation. I think Russia will bring this war to their territory with retaliatory strikes. Let's see. Let's see how it's going to go. But one should always keep in mind, dear friends, that it's not Russia that is seeking escalation. It's a collective West. It's a Western ruling class and the so-called elites of the West that are constantly escalating, right? One should always keep that in mind. And as I said, Russia rejected, by the way, this ultimatum talks from Trump or the West. And we have, for example, comment from former Russian president, current deputy chairman of the Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, who posted basically in response to Trump's ultimatum. Next, Trump's playing the ultimatum games with Russia, 50-day or 10-day. He should remember two things. Russia is not Israel or even Iran. That's the first. And second, each new ultimatum is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country. Don't go down this Sleepy Joe road. Dmitry Medvedev recommended to Trump, and he's very clear, isn't it? Every step towards further escalation, including ultimatums, is a step towards war, direct war between Russia and US, which will mean end of US, right? Which will mean total obliteration of US. And one might say, well, Russia will be obliterated too. I mean, by the way, we don't want this war to happen, but if it comes to full-scale war, full-scale nuclear exchange, yes, there are going to be no winners, by the way. We will die, and our enemies will die. Everybody will die. That's how serious situation is. And you are the witness, dear friends, how many times Russian leadership warned Western politicians, Western political class, Western so-called elites to use brakes, to de-escalate, because they are bringing this world towards their end, right? Towards their devastating end. But unfortunately, Western ruling class did not listen and continues to ignore all Russian warnings, by the way, which is very unfortunate, to say the least, right? Also, Medvedev, by the way, went to comment on Lindsey Graham's statements. Obviously, Lindsey Graham, being an extreme Russia hater, went on to celebrate sort of Trump's new ultimatum, 10, 12-day ultimatum, and Medvedev reacted on that too. It is not up to Graham or Trump to decide when to sit down for negotiations, Medvedev said. Let me give you a little more details on that. Deputy head of Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, responded to Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina, and shame on South Carolina, by the way, for having such a disgraceful element as their senator, as their representative. Something wrong with people there, I can tell you. 100%, by the way. They have no brains whatsoever. I mean, freaking zombies, man. And I'm insulting them, by the way, intentionally, absolutely. Right? South Carolina's electorate that supports Lindsey Graham is a brainwashed, brain-dead freaking animals, man. I'm 100% convinced in that, because no decent human being with brains will ever support Lindsey Graham, man. Period. Right? Period. But nevertheless, so Dmitry Medvedev responded to this Lindsey Graham's statement that it is not for him or U.S. President Donald Trump to decide when to sit down at the negotiating table in a Ukrainian conflict. It is not, we have a quote here, it is not for you and Trump to decide when to sit down at the negotiating table. Negotiations will end when all the goals of our military operations are achieved. Work for America first and foremost. Grand pass. Medvedev wrote in H. He did not use or he used Grand Pass. No, he, I believe, used some different. He mocked basically Lindsey Graham and Trump with his comment. Grumps. He used Grumps, by the way. Yes, Grumps. Uh, okay, okay. Nevertheless, this is Medvedev's comment on that, and if you notice, dear friends, Medvedev is becoming more and more critical in his comments, towards Trump. If Putin maintains diplomatic language in his statements, Medvedev clearly has no patience for these sickening elements that are threatening Russia from the collective West. And one might argue, and that Medvedev is basically saying what also Putin has to say. And if so, then I guess Putin's patience is also running out. Yet again, dear friends, I think first of all we will find out soon, but I think once US and other NATO countries will escalate with Russia militarily, when this 10-12 day ultimatum will end, Russia will respond. I think, and Russian response will be in a scale that will finally force Western ruling class to come to their senses, face the reality, and acknowledge that they lost. Hello everyone, I hope you find informative and useful this short clip from main news update, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything. It might help to deal with the algorithm and reach wider audience. And if you like my work in general and want to support to save this media project, you can assist through several ways. You can donate to this project through PayPal platform or Boosty, also with the crypto currencies, or you can subscribe to my Patreon page and page on Boosty, where I have quite a lot of extra content on regular basis. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And of course, many thanks to everyone who already helped and continues to support. Thank you.